Welcome back, it's FNU57 here. I am back on NeverWinter on the Xbox One, and it is finally time for my long-awaited Mod 12, getting ready for Mod 12.5 Control Wizard build. Now this is my pure DPS build, and I will be covering 3 loadouts for this build. Each one slightly different, so please bear with me on that. And I will be covering everything from A to Z on the wizard, literally building it on up. Now, disclosure, builds are greatly dependent upon stats. So if you have a fresh level 70, you're not going to do as much damage as I will, because I have higher gear, higher enchantments, so on and so forth. It's really key that you balance certain stats. The build will work at high item level, low item level, and anywhere in between. You just have to balance your stats accordingly. So let's go ahead and get started with the build that you are more than likely most familiar with. This is going to be my farming AoE PvE loadout. This is my basically not so tryhard loadout. And this is the build that you're pretty much familiar with. So initially, we'll get started with stats. Now, I am using Tiefling. You could use really whatever you wanted as far as a race goes, but the top 2 races are Tiefling and Human, and they're almost tied for the number 1 position. So really, it's end user preference as to which you like better. Now you'll see I already have my points spent, and I spent everything in Intelligence and Charisma. Your initial starting roll should be 20 Intelligence, 13 Wisdom, 15 Charisma. That is including the racial bonus for Tiefling. Your roll may be different if you are using Human, and the rest of this guide will assume that you are using Tiefling. So once you spend your points after reaching level 70, that is what your stats should look like. Intelligence is your damage bonus. Charisma is your critical hit chance. And a couple other little odds and ends. So that's what your stats should look like, basically. As far as gear, on my farming AoE PvE loadout, there are various different sets that you can use. It is not 100% necessary as to which set you use. At the moment, I have the Rex helmet. I have the Rex chestplate. Both of these items are dropped from the King of Spines, which is a star 3 hunt in the jungles of Cholt, basically in the Soshan Star River area. Then I have the Primal Raid gauntlets, and these you have to buy with Seals of the Brave. Again, the vendor is in the jungles of Cholt, specifically Port Nyanzaru, and you get the Seals of the Brave by doing the Tomb of the Nine Gods dungeon. For a artifact weapon set, I have the Aboleth set, now that the glitch has been fixed on it. And I have, for boots, I have Boots of the Alpha. Now these come from Surush, which is a Star 2 hunt, again, Jungles of Cholt, Soshan Star River area. And I have videos on the hunts. Should you have any questions about that, you can check them out if you would like. Now, as far as for main and offhand weapon set, the 3 best weapon sets in the game are Relic weapons, the equivalent Titan Steel, also known as Stronghold 2 or Mastercraft 2 weapons, and then really Ascendant weapons. Ascendant weapons are not the best. The reason why I have them is because I did not have the money for the Titan Steel set, since I'm running 2 weapon sets. One for single target and one for AoE. The set that I have equipped right now is for AoE. I'll cover that in a second when I get to enchantments. My shirt and pants, I'm using the Gemmed Exquisite Elemental set. I like that for its stat setup. For rings, use the best rings that you have. For me, that is the Rising Lifesteal +5 and the Rising Power +5. Don't worry too much if you don't have a +5 ring. A +4 will work in time, but ideally you want the +5s for the double offensive slots. For my neck, I'm currently using the Sphene Amulet and the Rubelite Sash. Now, I know some of you will say, well, what happened to the Valindra set? I used to use the Valindra set. You can still use the Valindra set. It's just no longer that great. And the reason why it's no longer that great is this is the Mastercraft 2 set, and when you use the Mastercraft 2 set, it provides you the identical stat bonuses, this belt specifically, to Intelligence and Charisma as the Valindra's belt. The difference is it's a 2-part set, and when you use an encounter power, you gain a stack, and basically that's 500 recovery and 1,000 movement for 5 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. Not the best set bonus, but one of my personal favorite ones. You could also use the Intelligence set, and if you were human, you could just use the Intelligence set for all your loadouts. Personal preference, though, at the end of the day, there's multiple different sets that you can use. Now, just a little bit I want to cover about your enchantments. For my farming build, I go ahead and use different enchantments than my Tryhard builds. So you'll notice that I have a Black Ice enchantment in the defensive slot on this armor. And you can use either the Black Ice enchantments, which are better with Assassin's Covenant, or you can use a Azure or a Dark enchantment, depending on which stat you want more. Whether you want more defense, more lifesteal, or if you want more total stats to get like an extra 20 power from Assassin's Covenant. Really minimal, depends on the end user. You also can use a combination of different enchantments in your defensive slots. For instance, I have like 1 Black Ice enchantment and 2 Dark enchantments. But that's up to you, end user. For your utility slots, for farming, I use a Fey Blessing enchantment. That enchantment drops extra enchantments on the ground, and you just pick them up. They're bound to account for your refinement points. I also use a Dragon Hordes enchantment. That works pretty much the same way, except the item goes right into your inventory. And that's going to be your White Pearls, your Paradots, your Aquamarines, and things of that nature. I use a split XP gain / gold gain enchantment. I use a Savage enchantment. You don't have to use that, but one thing that I recommend you always keep at least one of on is the Quartermaster enchantment. And that's because it drops a little bag of goods, or has a chance to when you kill a target. And then if you hold on to those bags and open them with the right drop chance, you get rank 6 and rank 7 bound to account enchantments and runestones. So probably one of the best refinement gain enchantments in the game. If you're on a Tryhard loadout, pretty much all of your utility slots should be darks. So it just depends as you go. Now, for my artifacts, my main is the Wheel of Elements, even though you guys know I don't particularly like this artifact. But it does give the largest damage bonus. If you didn't want to use it, alternatives would be the Eye of the Giant or the Lantern of Revelation. Tome of Ascendance may be in AoE, but really up to you. My support artifacts are the Thayan Book of the Dead, the Sigil of the Controller, and the Lantern of Revelation. I have considered, and my stats would actually be better for it in Tomb of the Nine Gods, if I swap the Sigil of the Controller for the Fragmented Key, the Key of Many Stars. That artifact is Power, Armor Pen, Crit. So 1,000 Power, 1,000 Armor Pen, 600 Crit, if I'm not mistaken, at Mythic. That is the only artifact that I may be swapping out, but like I said, I can make improvements to the character. I don't have everything I absolutely wanted. Now, you notice I skipped armor and weapon enchantments. Armor and weapon enchantments, I use on AoE, a Transcendent Lightning. This works for pretty much everything. Mobs, bosses. It's a good all-around enchantment if you can only have one. Dread also works, but Lightning got buffed and Lightning's now better. I also have a Bilethorn, and the Bilethorn works better in high power buff groups, single target damage. Now on the armor enchantment, you'll notice that I switched armor enchantments. I now have a Bark Shield. The Bark Shield is better if you are doing content quickly, where you're taking a couple hits, and the hits that you're taking are very high. If you're taking constant damage, then you want your negation. As you'll see in my inventory, I have the negation, which I swap in and out depending upon the dungeon that I'm running, and I have the dread, which I swap in and out depending upon the dungeon and the group that I'm running. For your overload slots, I prefer to run the Greater Corrupted Black Ice enchantment, because this gives you more power, and it gives you action point gain. Then I also use a Greater Black Dragon glyph, which gives you some more crit and a little bit of extra damage. The problem with the Greater Corrupted Black Ice enchantments, they're a little expensive. They do have a combat timer of 8 hours, and the Greater Dragon glyphs have a combat timer of 2 hours. So you're probably not going to put those on for farming. You're mostly going to put those on when you need to try hard, or if there's a piece of content that's going slightly sideways. Alright, now that I covered the gear for you, let's go ahead and break down the powers that we'll be using. For this particular setup, I have Magic Missile on my left trigger, and then I have Chilling Cloud on my right trigger. I have both of those at wills because it depends upon what you're doing, which one is better. In AoE, or packs of mobs, I prefer Chilling Cloud, but if I'm fighting at range against a boss, I prefer Magic Missile because it has a faster cast time and a faster travel speed. So it can proc Spell Twisting earlier than Chilling Cloud would, and I'll cover Spell Twisting later. But that's what I use for my at-wills. Now, for my personals, I use Chilling Presence, because this gives you a damage bonus for every stack of chill a target has, and that damage bonus doubles on frozen targets. I also use Storm Spell, and these are the same on all of my loadouts. What Storm Spell is 30% of the time when you crit, you call down a bolt of lightning, and that does additional damage. So I really quite enjoy those two. Now for my daily powers, I use Oppressive Force, and that's LB and X for me. That's the one that I use if I need an area of effect power. And then I use Ice Knife, which is better against a single target. So like in boss battles, that's going to hit extremely hard. Now for encounter powers. This varies a little bit depending upon the fight that you're in. As a general rule, I have Conduit of Ice on my RB, or tab if you're on PC, and that's your Spell Mastery slot. This should only be used in your Spell Mastery slot, and you cast it on the target that has the highest HP. This way it lasts the longest. It doesn't do as much damage to the target it's cast on, but it does a crap ton of damage to everything around it, and because it's in Spell Mastery, it has a larger area of effect, and it stacks chill for you. Then I use Icy Terrain on X. This is not really a hard-hitting power, but excellent for proccing Storm Spell, for chaining the lightning damage from your enchantment. It's just a very nice thing. Also for freezing enemies, because it'll apply a massive amount of stacks of chill, and any targets on it that have 6 stacks of chill will be frozen. Then I use Sudden Storm, and depending on the instance, I will either use Steal Time, but Steal Time has a slow cast speed, so you really have to be careful, and it depends upon your team in the dungeon. Or I will use Disintegrate. Disintegrate hits extremely hard, almost harder than Ice Knife, depending upon your spec, and it has a short cooldown. However, it is a single target power, not an AoE power. It's up to you what instance, what piece of content, what team you have, as far as which one of those powers you keep equipped, but those are the ones that I swap between. Now we'll cover feats. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of the Control Wizard. I have, in the heroic category, your tier 1s, I have 1 point in controlling action. Now again, this is my farming build. Most stuff that you're farming is not going to be immune to CC, so gaining the little bit of extra action points, it's pretty nice. Then I have Weapon Mastery, 3 of 3, because increased crit chance. That's a no-brainer. Toughness, 3 of 3, increases your HP by 9%, which is, well, I mean, not enough to save you from getting one shot, but with the way that Aura of Courage works from a pally, kind of nice. Plus, the more HP you have, the greater the chance you'll survive the hit and be able to heal it off with Lifesteal. Now, Tier 2 Heroics. Fight On. Pretty much useless for farming. Our powers, at best, are like a 10-second cooldown, so even if you had that maxed out, you'd maybe shave a second off of the cooldown. Not really worth it. Battle-wise, Trap Feat. You create less threat. Just, God, why does that even exist in the game? Completely useless. Wizard's Wrath, 3 of 3. Your area of effect powers deal 3% more damage. Tier 3 Heroics, Lightning Power. I only have 2 of 3 in this one. And that is where 4%, you gain a 4% damage bonus to targets affected by chill. And that applies to your cold damage powers. So that's going to be your Icy Terrain, your Ice Knife, Chill Strike, anything of that nature. Conduit of Ice. Then Lightning Teleport. Again, Trap Feat, completely useless. 0 points there. So I take Arcane Enhancement, and I put 3 of 3 points in there. Now, some people prefer to put the point in Lightning Power because it is 2% damage instead of a 1% damage bonus. I put the 1% damage bonus because that is applied to Ray of Enfeeblement, Oppressive Force, Steal Time, or Disintegrate. I would rather have the extra damage on those. Now, here's where the difference comes in if you're human, so keep that in mind. This is for Tiefling. I take Focused Wizardry, 3 of 3. Your single target powers deal 30% more damage, and your area of effect powers deal 10% less damage. This is in Mod 12, this is on console, this is what we are currently working with. If it is different on PC, because there's been some things on preview shards and stuff, some talk about the possibility that it could be area of effect powers deal 30% less damage, even with 3 points in there, at that point I would not take this feat. But the way that it exists in-game right now on console, this feat is worth it. The last 2 points I put into Learned Spellcaster. This is a straight damage bonus. It increases the amount of bonus damage intelligence gives you. With only 2 points in there, it's only 2%. If you were human, you could spend your 3 extra feat points in Learned Spellcaster and max that out. If you're playing on PC, where Focused Wizardry could be different, and you were also human, then you would spend the 3 points in Learned Spellcaster, the extra point in Lightning Power, and I would throw 2 points in this Prestidigitation, or however you pronounce that. Not really a great feat, but it's there. Alright, so save those, moving on. Most of our points are going to be in the Thaumaturge Paragon. These are your Paragon points. Tier 1, Tempest Magic. When your target is below 30% max hit points, you deal an additional 5% damage. 5 of 5. That's a no-brainer. Malevolent Surge. When you kill a foe, you gain up to 5% more damage that lasts 15 seconds. It does not appear to stack, though. Not very useful against bosses. Quite useful when killing ads or just farming and questing. So I put 5 of 5 in there. Snap Freeze. Useless. 0 of 5. Destructive Wizardry, not useless, but highly skill dependent and rotation dependent. I personally do not like it, and I don't use it. 0 of 5. Now this is the important stuff. Elemental Reinforcement. When you cast a Fire, Arcane, Cold, or Lightning encounter power, you gain a 5% increased damage bonus for 10 seconds. Each element may apply this bonus separately. In other words, Conduit of Ice, Sunstorm, Disintegrate. That is a Cold, Lightning, and Arcane power. And they are all specifically encounter powers, which would then give you a 15% damage bonus for 10 seconds. Pretty nice self buff that you can do right there. Spell Twisting, 5 of 5. Your encounter powers apply spell twisting for 10 seconds, which stacks up to 3 times. When you cast an at-will power, your stacks of spell twisting are consumed to reduce the cooldown time on recharging powers. Cooldown time is reduced by 10% per stack. That's assuming you have 5 of 5 points like I do. This is a excellent power because it basically allows you to go through your rotation, tap an at-will, and then your encounter powers are either off cooldown or have like 1 second left on the cooldown. This tooltip does not read the way that the power actually works. That's why I have Magic Missile equipped. It is not when you cast the power, but when the at-will hits the target you cast it at. That is when spell twisting is actually consumed. So just keep that in mind. You want a at-will that can cast and travel quickly to proc spell twisting so you can go back through your encounter power rotation. Now we move on. Far spell. Completely useless. 0 of 5. Frozen power transfer. Since we're mainly using Chilling Cloud, but most speedrun groups, you don't have a chance to go through a full rotation. This requires a bit of skill to use, and I only spend 2 of 5 points. So Chilling Cloud now grants 2% bonus damage for every target you strike with the third strike. This bonus lasts for 20 seconds and stacks up to 3 times. Pretty easy. You can go through that rotation as an at-will, get that damage bonus, and then move on to your encounter powers. Transcendent Master. Trap feat. I don't like it at all. Nothing. 0 of 5. Elemental Empowerment. Dealing cold damage has a, in my case, because I'm at 3 of 5, 9% chance to apply Creeping Frost. Creeping Frost deals 85% of your weapon damage as cold damage every 2 seconds for 12 seconds. Dealing arcane damage has a 9% chance to apply Warped Magics. Warped Magics deals 50% of your weapon damage as arcane damage every 2 seconds for 12 seconds. Warped Magics ignores half of the target's resistance. These effects do not stack. Both effects can be applied to the same target. I've seen it happen. But they cannot stack and stack and stack and stack and stack. In other words, you cannot apply Creeping Frost again to the same target until Creeping Frost has already run out. So it's a dot damage power. And of course, 1 in Assailing Force, which is the capstone. Dealing damage to foes has a chance, but it's pretty much all the time. It procs very frequently to grant Assailant. When you have Assailant, your next encounter power deals 15% of the target's max HP as unresistible damage, max 800% weapon damage. This will only affect one target when used in an AoE, and the feat is half as effective and can be restricted or deflected or resisted when used on a player. So that's basically when it's used in PvP. Now you should have 15 Paragon points left. 5 of 5 in Bitter Cold. And this is up in the Oppressor Paragon. Targets take 5% more damage for 6 seconds after being affected by chill. This effect does not stack. Chilling Control. Sunstorm now applies 5 stacks of chill to targets hit by the primary strike. So you do have to aim a little bit carefully. And I have 5 of 5 points in there. Then Icy Veins. 5 of 5. When you activate an encounter power, all foes within 15 feet of you have 5 stacks of chill applied to them. So basically, you drop icy terrain and everything around you freezes because of that. And that's what my points look like. Next up is the good old boons. Guild boons, right up at the top. They will be of differing values and possibly different depending upon what guild you're in. I use the power boon for being in a maxed out guild that gives me 8,000 power. For defense, you're going to want to either use the lifesteal boon, the defense boon, or if you're stacked out enough, the HP boon when you're running with a pally. If the pally isn't there, use a defense or lifesteal boon. For utility, it's personal preference, but I always use the experience boon And then PvP, it's really up to you. But all the boons give you item level, so equip what you would like. I only have like one boon in the PvP campaign, and they're kind of like meh, so I skipped that. Sharandar. This is an excellent campaign and an easy one. You're going to go straight across the bottom. Dark Fey Hunter, 400 power. Fey Precision, 400 critical hit. Elven Haste. You gain action points 3% faster. Elven Ferocity. When striking a foe, you have a chance to deal up to 20,000 arcane damage. That actually procs fairly frequently. And then Elvish Fury. When you kill a foe, you gain 135 power for 45 seconds. This buff can stack up to 30 times. Now, Dreadring. This is where it gets a little funky. I used to take the crit and movement speed, but it's not really worth it because my critical hit chance is as high as it is now. So I take the Reliquary Keeper's Strength, which is 250 power, 250 movement. Evoker's Thirst, 400 lifesteal. Forbidden Piercing, 3% resistance ignored. Shadow Touch. When dealing damage, you have a chance to deal up to 20,000 necrotic damage over a few seconds. After this effect ends, the target receives 25% less healing from spells for 10 seconds. And the last one, Rampaging Madness. When you deal damage, you gain a stack of Madness. When you reach 50 stacks of Madness, you gain 4,000 power, 4,000 lifesteal, and 4,000 regeneration for 10 seconds. After gaining this bonus, your stacks are reset. You may only gain 1 stack of Madness per second. So basically, every 50 seconds, you then gain 4,000 power, lifesteal, and regen for 10 seconds. Pretty good, actually. Surprisingly, pretty good. Now, Icewind Dale. Another relatively easy one. Encroaching Tactics, 400 combat advantage bonus. Refreshing Chill, 400 stamina gain. Sleet Skills, 2% critical hit severity. Cool Resolve. You gain up to 2,000 power based on how much stamina or guard you are missing. Not the best thing for a control wizard, but better than Cold Shoulder. For a final one, I take Avalanche. When damaged by a foe, chance to gain a stack of Avalanche at 20 stacks. Taking damage will clear the stacks and deal up to 15,000 damage to nearby targets. Damage over time effects will not trigger this ability. Not the best ability, but pretty much better than the rest of them. Underdark. I take the Primordial Might. 400 power, 1,600 maximum hit points. Primordial Regenesis. 400 lifesteal, 1,600 maximum hit points. Drow Ambush Tactics. Combat advantage damage bonus is increased now by 10%. And Dwarven Footing. Control effects will now have a 5% shorter duration when applied to you. For the capstone, I take Abyssal Strikes. Gain 10% damage versus demons. Tyrannia Dragons. This is an easy one and hasn't changed. Dragon's Claws, 400 power. Dragon's Gaze, 400 crit. Draconic Armbreaker, 400 armor pen. Dragon's Greed, 400 lifesteal. And for the last 3 points, I put 1 in Dragon's Thirst for 3% increased lifesteal. That is lifesteal chance, not severity. And then 2 points in Dragon's Fury for 6.5% increased critical hit severity. This is probably one of the best campaigns in the game because you literally get all the key stats. You get power, crit, armor pen, lifesteal. I love the Tyrannia Dragons campaign. It's one of my favorites. Now we have Maze Engine. I take Abyssal Siphoning. You gain 5% lifesteal severity. So when your lifesteal procs, it hits harder and heals you for more. Then I take Demonic Resilience. Control effects will now have a 5% shorter duration when applied to you. Now this is like your knockbacks, your stuns, your prone, your root, your spiderweb slows, anything like that. You want to be able to move. You don't want to be able to be stunned. And if you're stunned, you can't cast. So that's why I take that as opposed to the combat advantage bonus, because I have combat advantage bonus on my weapon under the artifact power, which I'll show you in a second. Then I take Demonic Swiftness. You now gain action points 3% faster. And I don't have the last boon. Like I said before, I have issues with that quest. But I'm just going to buy the unlock for it. And then that will give me the Baphomet's Might. When striking a foe, you have a chance to gain 2,000 critical strike bonus for 6 seconds. And that procs surprisingly often. For the Elemental Evil campaign, I have Wave of Force, which gives you 300 power, 2,000 HP. Heart of Stone, 4% Lifesteal Severity and 2,000 HP. Then Searing Aggression, 400 crit, 2,000 HP. And for the capstone, Gale of Retribution, which is when taking damage, you have a chance to heal up to 24,000 hit points over a few seconds after this effect ends. Your critical strike is increased by 1,000 for 10 seconds. Now, when you are at lower item level, Gale of Retribution is best. Once you get your critical hit maxed out, which we'll talk about that a little bit later on, then you might want to go with Gale of Wind for the recovery. Storm King's Thunder. Pretty simple, not the best boons. Cold-Hearted, 2% Lifesteal Severity and 1,000 HP. Survival Instincts, 400 incoming healing bonus and 2% Everfrost damage resistance. Icy Wrath, chance when taking damage to gain up to 2,000 bonus damage on the next attack. Vengeful Heat, when you kill a foe, you have a chance to deal up to 2,000 fire damage to all nearby enemies. You also gain 2% Everfrost damage resistance. And then all 3 points into Chill of Winter. When striking a foe, you have a chance to gain a stack of Icy Chill. At 10 stacks, your next attack clears all stacks and releases a burst of damage that deals up to 14,000 damage to targets close to you. Damage over time effects will not trigger this ability. Then we have the Cloaked Ascendancy. I take Aura of Hope. When you kill an enemy, there's a chance that you emit an Aura of Hope, which boosts action point gain for all allies within 25 feet for 10 seconds. Then Fiery Frenzy, you gain 2% critical strike severity and 1,000 maximum HP. Then I take, if it will let me highlight it, the Fey one, which is 500 lifesteal, 2,000 maximum HP. And the capstones aren't really that great, so I take Aberrant Power. When damaged by a foe, you have a chance to gain a stack of Aberrant Power. At 10 stacks, taking damage will clear all stacks and deal up to 10,000 damage to nearby targets. Aberrant creatures take double damage. For our newest campaign, we had the Jungles of Cholt, and unfortunately, most of them are kind of meh. So I take Tyrant's Terror. I already have 2 of 3. But once I have the last boon, I'm going to put all 3 points into Tyrant's Terror, gaining 1,000 power and 1,600 maximum hit points. For a capstone, the Impenetrable Jungle one I don't like. Death's Blessing, I don't really like that one. I suppose it's not bad to keep you healed, but I'm going to take one of these two, either Soul Siphon or Lingering Curse. The problem is they all say chance on hit. So I do not know if it is a chance on hit referring to when you get hit or when you hit the enemy. It doesn't say chance on taking damage. It doesn't say chance on striking the enemy. It just says chance on hit. So who knows? But I'm going to go with Lingering Curse because it says chance on hit to apply Lingering Curse to your target, which lasts for 10 seconds. Can be applied once per 60 seconds. When a target which has Lingering Curse is killed, its soul explodes out at a random enemy within 20 feet, causing 30,000 damage and applying Lingering Curse. So as long as you can kill mobs quickly, that's a nice little boon right there. And that sums up all the boons currently. Now we have Companions. I do love Companions. This is where a large chunk of your stats is going to come from. Now, I am using a Striker Companion, and this particular one is a Con Artist, but you could use a Sellsword or Rebel Mercenary as well. The difference between the Sellsword and the Con Artist, the Sellsword uses different gear and has 3 offensive slots, where the Con Artist uses 3 rings, but has 2 offensive slots, 1 defensive slot. So I'm using my Bonding Runestones, And then I have 2 Greater Astorian Dodd rings and 1 regular Astorian Dodd ring. Once I get a 3rd adequate ring, I will go ahead and have an extra offensive slot, which will allow me to deal even more damage. What I have in the slots right now are Brutals, and then an Azor enchantment in the defensive slot. The reason why you want a Con Artist, Sellsword, or Rebel Mercenary is they have the Consumed by Battle. This unlocks when the companion is rarity rare, or otherwise known as blue, and it is the final strike of Wicked Strike now shreds 10% of the target's defenses. This stacks for every Con Artist or Rebel Mercenary or Sellsword in the group. Remember, they did change with Mod 12 the way debuffs work, and debuffs now have a 300% soft cap with diminishing return on enemies. So the Bonding Runestones, currently Mod 12, yes, I know it changes in Mod 12B, but we don't have Mod 12B on console yet. Right now, they give me 285% of my companion stats when he's in combat. And my companion has 1,540 defense, 762 armor pen, 4,107 critical hit, and 5,787 power. I also get the bonus for him being legendary, because they changed the legendary bonus. Owner gains 16% of summoned companions' ratings. Each additional active legendary companion gives a bonus half as large as the previous one. So it goes 16% for the first one, 8 for the second, 4 for the third, 2 for the fourth, and the fifth one gives you 1%. As you can see, I don't have all 5 of my companions legendary. Then I have the Air Archon. This is a must for its active bonus. Increase your damage against targets not at full health by 5%. Each additional active Archon increases this bonus by 0.5%. I have the Araneza Belial, which is active bonus plus 10% critical hit severity. That unlocks at Epic. It's 5% at Blue. And then I have the Fire Archon, which increases your damage against targets with less than 50% HP by 7%. Each additional active Archon increases this by 0.5%. And the final companion, when you're in a group, I have the Tame Velociraptor. When you're by yourself, you could use the Siege Master. The Tame Velociraptor is better in groups if everyone has it, because the active bonus is you are part of the pack. You and any allies that are part of the pack are granted plus 1% damage. This effect may stack up to 5 times. So basically, if there's 5 tamed Velociraptors in the group, then you get a 5% damage bonus, whereas the Siege Master at Epic is only a 4% damage bonus outside of the Guild Stronghold. Better if the group has it, but if the group doesn't have it, then you could run the Siege Master. Honestly, up to you. That's my companions. For mounts, I do have 2 mounts that I can swap between, and this is entirely up to you. A lot of times when I'm farming, I swap that mount out with this mount right here, my Heavy Twilight Nightmare. This is what most of the time my farming setup looks like. Vampire's Craving, Assassin's Covenant, Protector's Camaraderie, Magistrate's Patience, Artificer's Persuasion. Now, Vampire's Craving is it's a heal over time that procs when you lifesteal. It's very convenient for those of you who are just running around, don't want to worry about healing potions, healing off of lifesteal. It heals for a decent amount. It's a farming loadout. If you want to try hard, then what I recommend is swapping that out for, let me go back down here to my Lord's Armored Polar Bear, for Gladiator's Guile, which is when your stamina is above 75%, you move 15% faster. When your stamina is below 25%, you gain 15% of your power as stamina gain. Not the best for a control wizard, because we only get about 4 teleports max out of our stamina bar, depending upon what your stamina gain is. But movement speed allows you to help keep up with the great weapon fighters, the hunter rangers, the rogues, and basically every other class in the game. Since control wizards walk around like they, just sat on a giant stick or are constipated, one of the two. Assassin's Covenant, you lose 10% of your defense, deflection, and lifesteal, and gain the combination of law stats as power. Protector's Camaraderie, whenever your summoned companion attacks, you gain 3% of your power and defense for 10 seconds. This effect can stack up to 4 times. Magistrate's Patience, whenever you perform a critical hit, your enemy targets will take damage equal to 10% of your power over 4 seconds. Then it has a separate effect for healing. That is a scaling buff. It is directly affected by your current amount of power. The more power you have, the more damage it ticks for. Then Artificer's Persuasion. Whenever you use a artifact power, your recovery, movement, action point gain, stamina gain are increased by 10% of your power for 15 seconds. Again, that is a fluctuating buff. It goes off of what your power actually is. Now, they might change the Magistrate's Patience to where it's off of just your flat power, but I haven't personally seen that change yet. So that's what I run for my mounts. And what you're going to want is, of course, whatever insignias you can afford, but epic ones are best because they give you 200 stat rating, and you're ideally going to want dominance. As you can see, I mostly use dominance for the ones that can, which is 200 power and 100 companion influence. And for the ones that I don't have dominance for, I use mastery, which is 200 recovery and 100 control bonus. The control bonus isn't that great, but the recovery is quite nice. Don't worry if you don't have all epic insignias. This has taken me a very long time to get to the point that I have all of those. Now, the very last and final thing, if you wish to swap around and do a little bit of tryharding, I also keep the additional relic weapons set here as well. And with my relic weapons, that's where I keep my single target enchantment. For potions, most of the time I don't use potions, but if I'm going to use potions, I normally will use like a squash soup, a wild storm elixir, or something along the lines of like just a regular power potion, which I have in my potion tray. And that's basically what I use for potions, because again, this is a farming loadout. Alright, now we've covered the farming loadout, let's move on to the Tryhard Loadout. Well, actually, Jinx, there's one last step I almost forgot, and that is your legendary mount, if you have one. And stat rating. Sorry, I didn't cover your stat ratings. My bad, I got ahead of myself. If you have a legendary mount, you want either a 4,000 power, 4,000 crit mount, or because of the changes in the new mod, the legendary T-Rex is one of my favorites. Not only for its combat power, because when you use it, it puts a debuff on enemies in the vicinity. Debuffs their defenses by 10% for 10 seconds. But its equip power is 2,000 power and 2,000 armor pen. So quite nice. Now the last thing that I needed to do, because I totally skipped this, and before anyone freaks out, this is your stats. These are your really important things you have to keep an eye on. Once you get to about 10k item level. Under that, it's slightly less important. Power, that's a direct damage bonus. The more power you have, the more damage bonus you have. Also, the more bonus healing you have if, like, you do healing. Critical strike, this affects your critical hit chance. Armor penetration, that affects your damage resistance ignored. Recovery, that affects your recharge speed and action point gain. Action point gain directly affects action point gain. Combat advantage bonus directly affects how much combat advantage damage you deal, which is a additional amount of damage you deal if you are on the opposite side of your target and there's another player on the other side. Then control bonus, defense, which just helps you resist the damage. Deflect, not really that great on a wizard because we can't get the deflection chance that high. Lifesteal, definitely needed. This determines what percentage of the attacks that hit heal you. And then Lifesteal Severity, which determines how hard those attacks that do proc Lifesteal, how hard they actually heal you. Now it says 0. I don't know why it says 0, but it says Lifesteal Severity plus 100%. Tenacity is PvP. Stamina gain lets you regenerate your stamina faster. Incoming healing bonus, whatever you would be healed for by a spell or by Lifesteal, goes through that and contributes to your healing. AoE resist, control resist, movement speed. Companion influence contributes to companion stat bonus, of course gold gain and all of that. Now these are your resting stats. These are your stats out of combat. This is the part that doesn't matter as much. My resting stats are 65.6% crit chance, 95.5% critical hit severity, 52.3% resistance ignored, with a 48.3% recharge speed bonus and 23.9% action point gain. 20% damage resistance, 2.5% deflection chance, 0.2% health regen, 0.2 bonus incoming healing, and a 10.5% lifesteal chance, with a total rating for lifesteal severity of 111%. Last thing I'm going to show you is actually in combat, a quick little rotation that I normally do, and this does not matter whether you are running Conduit of Ice or not, or whether you're running Steel Time or not. Generally speaking, I put Conduit of Ice on the target first, then I'll usually grab my wheel, lay icy terrain. If it's a big pack, I'll send my mount in and go through your rotation. Basically, just you're going to nuke everything. Alright, so relatively easy to do, and now I'm going to show you the important stats, because everything is proccing right now. I have all of my buffs, my Rex Corona buff, my Fierce Advantage buff, and I did have the Chestplate buff. Those are all pieces of gear. They are the Rex Helmet. You gain 100 power for every 5 seconds you are in combat, and it stacks until you get to the point that it's been 2 minutes. Then the buff disappears and is no longer active. The Rex Chestplate, at the start of combat, your power is increased by 1500 for 10 seconds. The Primal Raid Gauntlets, when you damage or heal your target for 15% of your maximum HP in a single blow, you gain 1% of your power for 10 seconds, stacks 5 times. And of course, you have the Boots of the Alpha, which their equip bonus is meh, because sometimes at the start of combat, very rarely I should mention, you get a little dinosaur that runs in and does damage for you. Now these are the important stats. This is buffed by my companion. I have 65,360 power, fluctuating around 29 to 30,000 crit, and about 7,700 to 8,000, because it does fluctuate a little bit, armor pen. These are the stats that matter. It's when you're buffed by your companion in combat. That gives me a 97 to 100% crit chance, which is perfect. 71.7% resistance ignored, and also gives me a 10.5% lifesteal chance, with a 32.7% damage resistance for a defensive bonus. Now, the reason why you want 100% crit chance is you want every one of your attacks to crit, so they proc Storm Spell more frequently. The resistance ignored, everywhere outside of the mod 12 area, you could have 60, 64% and be fine with. Inside the Soshin Star River or anything in the jungles of Cholt, you're going to want 70%, 75%. And then at the second boss in Tomb of the Nine Gods, you want 85% damage resistance ignored. That's how that changes. Last thing on my artifact, if you look at Manage Artifact Powers, I have the bonus for Chilling Cloud, so it applies stacks of chill. And on my Offhand, I have the bonus for Storm Spell, so that it has a 5% chance to deliver an additional strike. And I also have more action point gain instead of combat advantage bonus. But you're going to want combat advantage bonus or action point gain being ideal for those. Remember, I should mention this. I have, as you can see, 124 power points. You can gain power points several ways. When you over level after level 70, there's a chance that you'll get a power point. You can make power points in the Sharandar campaign. So literally under your campaigns, under Sharandar, once you progress far enough, there is the Assist the War Effort task. It costs campaign currency, gold, and 15,000 diamonds, and rewards a power point. And one last way, which is the new way, it's actually in the Zen market, but you can buy all of that good stuff. You can buy power points. I don't particularly like buying power points, but you can buy them from the Zen market. Now that's irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. And then in my potion tray, I have my pocket pet, my Timora's lucky coin, and right on the D-pad can be whatever you want. Potions, health stones, a chair to sit in. It's up to you. So, here's the fun part. Loadouts. Gotta love loadouts. Nice Mod 11 feature. Loadouts are going to be under character, and you either have to be in the guild stronghold, in Protector's Enclave, or at a bonfire to switch loadouts. So it's a little bit buggy, a little bit annoying. You cannot have different enchantments in the same piece of gear. You cannot have different artifact powers selected on the same piece of gear. And you cannot have a different race on a different loadout. All things that I wish they would change. But you can simply go into your character screen, press Y, and select your Tryhard Loadout. Alright, so this is where we get a little bit spicy. Here we have Tryhard AoE. Now you'll notice that just about nothing changed on the gear. Everything's the same. Helmet, chest plate, arms, everything's the same. Weapon set, artifacts. The only thing that changed is my artifact set. For this, I'm using the Greater Owlbear Leather Belt of Intelligence, and I am using the Company Raider Cloak. Now you'll notice I'm missing a couple enchantments because sadly, I did not have the diamonds to build 4 more additional enchantments and rank them up to rank 12 for this. So I do have to swap around my enchantments if I'm going to do single target AoE and things like that. But other than that, my gear's the same. My stats are virtually the same. They're spec'd the same way, except I have 34 intelligence because obviously the intelligence belt and the intelligence neck. And of course the campfire bonus. Now you'll notice that I'm running full AoE. Icy Terrain, Sudden Storm, Steel Time, and Conduit of Ice. Steel Time could be swapped out for Disintegrate. Again, personal preference. So powers look the same. Oppressive Force for the daily. At Wills are the same. Chilling Presence for my personal and Storm spell. But feats are a little bit different. This is where we get a little curious. Toughness, 3 of 3. Weapon Mastery, 3 of 3. 1 of 5 in controlling action for 2% additional action points gained when using powers on a controlled target, because this is area of effect. This is meant to be killing mobs. Mobs usually can be controlled. Tier 2 heroics. Fight on, 0 of 5. Battle-wise, 0 of 3. Wizard's Wrath, 3% more damage for AoE powers. Why, thank you very much. Arcane Enhancement, 3 of 3. 3% more damage for arcane powers. Yep, I'll take that. Lightning Teleport, useless, 0 of 5. Lightning Power, 3 of 3. That's 6% additional damage to targets affected by chill. Yep, love it. Learned Spellcaster, 4 of 5. And this is if you were using Tiefling, this is how it would look. If you're using Human, then you could switch it up a little bit and put the other 3 points wherever you want them. I do not have Focused Wizardry, because why would I reduce my area of effect damage, even only by 10%, when I'm not using any single target powers? The only power that I might use in a certain situation would be Disintegrate. Moving on, save that. most of your points are going to be in Thaumaturge. And this is assuming that you're running with another wizard as well. So this is like putting on your Tryhard pants. If you're not running with another wizard, then you can use my farming build because you won't be as squishy. But if you're running with another wizard, they're probably stacking stacks of chill for you, and you want to steal some additional damage. So that's what we're going to do. Tempest Magic, 5 of 5. Malevolent Surge, 5 of 5. Snap Freeze, 0 of 5. Destructive Wizardry, 0 of 5. Elemental Reinforcement, 5 of 5. Spell Twisting, 5 of 5. Far Spell, 0 of 5. Frozen Power Transfer, 2 of 5. Transcendent Master, 0 of 5. Elemental Empowerment, 3 of 5. And Assailing Force, 1 of 1 in the capstone. Now for your last 15 points, instead of going into Oppressor to take Icy Veins, we're going to go into Renegade. Again, this works better in a group than by yourself, and it works even better if you have like a full support wizard or another wizard with you that's stacking chill. Entirely up to you. You don't have control, so remember, you are squishy. You will not freeze targets as fast with this setup as you will with my regular farming build. I take Critical Power, 5 of 5. When you land a critical hit, you gain 5% of your total action points. Now, the bad thing is that can only happen once every 10 seconds, so it's not that useful. Reaper's Touch, your at-wills deal 10% more damage when you're within 20 feet of your target. Well, most of the time we're going to be close anyways. We're going to be within 20 feet. We don't use our at-wills a lot, but a little bit extra damage, why not? Energy Recovery, 0 of 5. Not really worth it. Even with 200k HP, that's only like 10k temporary HP that you get, and it's only a 25% chance of proccing, so not worth it. Unrestrained Chaos, well, I don't use Maelstrom of Chaos, so basically useless. Uncertain Alliance, or Allegiance, crappy. We're not a support wizard. We don't want to be buffing anyone else. We want to be doing damage. So instead, the last 5 points go in Abyss of Chaos. When you strike a foe with an encounter power, you mark them with Abyss. When an ally strikes that foe, they consume Abyss to deal 60% of your weapon damage. Now, you would think that this damage would be counted to the player that consumed Abyss of Chaos. It is not. It is damage that technically comes from your character, so that damage is counted to you. That's why I take that. Boons, going to be just a touch different, so let me run through them real quick. Offense, go for power. Defense, either defense or HP if you have a pally. Utility, XP, or mount movement speed. PvP, user's choice. Sharndar, across the bottom. Again. Dread Ring, you're going to take the 250 power, because we don't need the crit as much. Then Evoker's Thirst, Forbidden Piercing, Shadow Touch, Rampaging Madness. Icewind Dell, pretty much the same thing, except Encroaching Tactics. Then this Appreciation of Warmth, because it's incoming healing bonus as opposed to stamina gain. Remember, you're not going to heal yourself as much. You're going to be relying on your lifesteal to off-heal the damage, so that's why I took that one. Sleet Skills for the 2% critical hit severity. Cool Resolve, and Avalanche, so that remained the same. Underdark changes a little bit. You go for Primordial Might, Primordial Focus, Drow Ambush Tactics, then Dwarven Footing, and Abyssal Strikes. Tyrannia Dragons is exactly the same. Dragon Claws, Dragon Gaze, Draconic Armbreaker, Dragon's Greed, then 1 in Dragon's Thirst, 2 in Dragon's Fury. Maze Engine, Abyssal Siphoning, Demonic Influence, Demonic Swiftness. The last one will be the same, Baphomet's Might. Elemental Evil, Wave of Force, Heart of Stone, Searing Aggression, and as you can see, I have Wall of Wind. For the recovery, because I don't really need the crit. Not that you're going to get hit and proc this all the time, but when you do, it's nice. Really personal preference since the bonus isn't active all the time, though. Storm King's Thunder, Cold-Hearted, Survival Instincts, Icy Wrath, Vengeful Heat, 3 of 3, and Chill of Winter. The reason why I'm not reading what every power does is because I already went through them on the farming build. Now I'm just showing you the hybrid variations. For the Cloaked Ascendancy, we're going to take Aura of Hope, Fiery Frenzy, and the Pve 1 for Lifesteal, with the same capstone that we did before, Aberrant Power. Then Jungles of Cholt, exact same thing. 3 in Tyrant's Terror, 1 in your choice, Lingering Curse or Soul Siphon. Honestly, I don't really notice the difference between those abilities. And that is the single, or not single target, but the AoE. And the reason why, let me go ahead and get into combat. Companion remains the same, mounts remain the same, boons, you know, all of that. So we'll look at the stats. Same thing, and remember this is missing a couple enchantments. So go down and looked at the buff value. I'm only at 94.6% crit chance in favor of more power, 73.5% resistance ignored, and then 32% damage resistance, and the same on the lifesteal bonus. Now the reason why I'm a little bit lower on crit is because using the intelligence set you lose 2 charisma, which directly contributes to 2% crit, and also at the same time the neck is power recovery armor pen. It doesn't have crit on it. So you can make up that crit in other ways. Normally, if you're running Tryhard, you're going to be running with your dragon glyphs, and all you technically have to do is pop like a squash soup, which gives you increased critical hit chance and severity. So I'll go ahead and use that. Or you could use a Wildstorm Elixir, and you can actually use both of them. Go ahead and attack again in combat and show you what my stats have changed to with those potions. 102.2% crit chance with 110.5% crit severity. Still 75.5% damage resistance ignored. I actually have more crit chance than what I need since I popped both of those potions. Now my rotation on this would be usually to grab fire before I go into combat, use Conduit of Ice, and then I'm going to be right in the middle when targets are fully debuffed using my daily. Use basically everything. Your rotation's going to be a little bit different because it's going to depend on what enemies are in front of you and whether you can go in first and actually survive a hit or two. Like, I mean, if it's a Castle Never, you should be able to survive a couple hits. If it's like FBI or MSP, you're going to be going in with the tank, hopefully not pulling aggro and trying to stay out of red. But that is the Tryhard AoE build. Last but not least, Tryhard 1, which is single target. Now this would be used against primarily bosses. This is assuming you're using the race Tiefling. If you're using the race Human, then the intelligence set is better for all loadouts. Now you'll notice my gear changed. I have my Mana Seeker Orb and Offhand. This is the Relic set. You could also use the Titan Steel set. That's up to you. I have my enchantment of choice is my Bilethorn. Now remember, Bilethorn does extra damage and it scales with your power, so in a really high power buff group it's better, but there are certain circumstances where using the lightning would be better or using the dread would be better. That's why I have the enchantments to swap between. I did change the set back to using the Rubelite Sash and the Sphene Amulet. The reason why I changed back to this set is simply because of the fact that it's a little bit better, just a wee bit better, since I'm not human. And that is for the recovery bonus. So you'll look at my spell tray. I have Ray of Enfeeblement, Sudden Storm, Disintegrate, Conduit of Ice, and Spell Mastery. The only time that might change is you may swap out Sudden Storm for Chill Strike if Sudden Storm cannot hit the target. So like Tyrannosaurs, Sudden Storm can't hit them. You'd swap out for Chill Strike normally on that. For feats, it's a little bit different here again. Toughness, 3 of 3. Weapon Mastery, 3 of 3. Controlling Action, 0 of 5. 4 of 5 on Fight On. I want to be able to cast Disintegrate. I want to be able to cast my either Conduit of Ice, Sudden Storm, Chill Strike. I want to be able to cast my powers quickly and then get them back quickly. And since I can't control bosses, using Controlling Action is basically worthless. 0 of 3 on Battle Wise, 0 of 3 on Wizard's Wrath. Wizard's Wrath would affect Sudden Storm and Conduit of Ice, but I don't use it simply because those abilities, the points are, in my opinion, better off spent elsewhere. Arcane Enhancement, 3 of 3. Lightning Teleport, 0 of 5. Lightning Power, only 2 of 3, as opposed to the 3 of 3, because, well, only Ice Knife and Conduit of Ice and Chill Strike are considered ice or cold powers. The rest are arcane or lightning. 2 of 5 in Learned Spellcaster, and 3 of 3 in Focused Wizardry for that 30% damage bonus to single target powers. If you were human, you would be able to go ahead and max Learned Spellcaster and Focused Wizardry, which would then make using the Intelligence set even better. I don't really like human for AoE. I prefer Tiefling. It's personal preference. At the end of the day, use what you like, as long as it gets the job done within reason. For my Paragon points, same exact thing. 5 of 5, Tempest Magic, Malevolent Surge, Elemental Reinforcement, Spell Twisting, then 2 of 5 in Frozen Power Transfer, 3 of 5 in Elemental Empowerment, and the Capstone Assailing Force. Also, 5 of 5 Critical Power, 5 of 5 Reaper's Touch, 5 of 5 Abyss of Chaos. Boons change just a wee bit. Not much. Guild, exactly the same as what I've been talking about. Dreadring is the exact same. Icewind Dell, the same. Underdark, pretty much the same. Tyranny of Dragons is always going to be the same on all loadouts. And we have the Maze Engine, which is where I take Abyssal Siphoning, Demonic Resilience, Demonic Swiftness for the action point gain, Baphomet's Might. Elemental Evil is the same thing, except it's really personal preference. If you're using the Sphene set, the Masterwork 2 set like I'm using, you might want Blazing Resilience, but that's personal preference. Then you see my Storm King's Thunders, the same, absolutely the same on Cloaked Ascendancy, and it would be the same thing in Jungles of Chult. The issue that I have with this is the Capstone is useless in single target on a boss fight. Both Soul Siphon and Lingering Curse are not really that great, unless there's ads. If there's ads around, they're great. If there's no ads around, they're not that good. Companions remain the same. Mounts remain the same. So pretty much all of that remains the same. Now, for single target, you have a little bit more at your disposal. Since primarily I'm going to be focusing on a boss most of the time, I do have Ray of Frost on, and I have Chilling Cloud on. Those are the only things that I have differently. Now, looking at my character, you'll see this is, of course, with those potions, which more than likely you'd be running potions. You have 106.6% crit chance with 110.5% crit severity. This is way more than what you need. But a simple rotation for this would be you're going to normally have a little bit of distance between you and the target, depending on what the boss is. But you do want to be within range of Conduit of Ice and within range of Sudden Storm. So you can see how far Sudden Storm goes. But generally, I'll lead with an At Will. So I'll normally lead with an At Will. If you have time, the full set of 3 for Chilling Cloud. If you don't have time, you can just tap Chilling Cloud, which I don't know why it's not like showing the animation for it. That's weird. But then I'll usually grab my wheel, and we'll make sure we have Conduit of Ice on, send in the Dinosaur, Ray of Enfeeblement, Sudden Storm, Disintegrate, and when the item is fully debuffed, use Ice Knife. Rinse and repeat. You do typically want to keep Ray out before. You want to make sure that the target basically that you're casting Disintegrate on has Ray of Enfeeblement on it and has max stacks of chill. So it's easy if you have Conduit of Ice and then you do something like that. You can just do massive damage and call down your Ice Knife. The other thing that you can do, which is personal preference and completely up to you, something that I just should mention, is of course the Pocket Pet and Timora's Lucky Coin. You can use other potions. You can use recovery potions. You can use the flasks. You can use the Potion of Heroism, the Elixir of Fate. The Potion of Heroism is from Sharandar. The Elixir of Fate is from the Vault of Piety. And what those do is increase your stats. They actually increase your stats. So if you read it, it doesn't really say much, but it gives you a temporary bonus to ability scores. What that means is that your actual ability points, your strength, constitution, dex, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, all are increased by +1, and the potion persists through death. So if you're really tryharding, you may want to use those potions, or at least one of each category of potion once mod 12b hits. And that is basically everything for the Control Wizard. Now your rotation changes a little bit because both, both of them, Ray of Enfeeblement and Sudden Storm, they have a little bit longer cooldown. But Conduit of Ice and Ray of Enfeeblement, I'll cast Conduit of Ice on a different target and Ray on that target. You'll see both of them are damage over time powers. They're dot damage powers. So they don't need to be reapplied as quickly. What you want to make sure you can constantly apply is Sudden Storm and Disintegrate so that they do that damage. Now, if you need to stack Chill on a single target, that's what I have Ray of Frost for. But you see it takes a little while to stack that Chill and actually freeze the target solid. I don't like Ray of Frost because it has to be cast on a target for about 1 to 2 ticks before it actually procs Spell Twisting. So what I like, go through my rotation there, hit it, and watch. There, it just procced Spell Twisting and I got my Disintegrate back. If you're fast enough on going through your rotation, you can get more than 1 Disintegrate off before Ray of Enfeeblement comes off cooldown. Just keep that in mind. Also, if you have a Pally running with you with Aura of Wisdom, or you have a Cleric with Hastening Light, that is going to increase how fast you can go through your rotation because it decreases the encounter power cooldowns. And then you just use your daily. You could also use the Sigil of the Devoted to get your daily back quickly and have like 2 Ice Knives to use in a boss fight. It's entirely up to you. It's entirely up to what your other team is running. If somebody is there to support you and like they let you use the Sigil of the Devoted and then they pop a Tome of Ascendance or a Wheel of Elements on you and let you get the offensive buff from that. There's a ton of different variables, but this is the gist to the Control Wizard. And of course, anytime you're at a campfire, you can go in and you can change your loadout to whatever it is that you're working on. Your gear will change. Your powers will change, what you had on your spell tray and all of that, your boons, everything will change when you change your loadout. So, hopefully this answered every question that you could possibly have about the Control Wizard. If you do have questions, though, don't hesitate to ask. Leave a comment. I'll be happy to help you out as best as I can. You're also welcome to message me on the Xbox or Discord or something like that and ask your questions there. Please do share the video with a friend and your guildmates, or guildmates, I should say. Also, if the video did help you, leave a like on it. That greatly helps out with the searchability of videos here on YouTube. And subscribe for more content. So, until next time, stay frosty.